Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I have a comment here that is well written, is well put, and obviously a heartfelt sentiment of the guy. Well, Glade Johnson. I'm sure that they'll be more than pleased if I read out their comment, because it is public. Okay, so here it is. The biggest problem of this country, and I assume that she means the Philippines, is corruption of government offices. That's why the president is trying to eliminate these corrupt people, especially provincial, where corruption is rampant. Government give funds for this people. Sadly, these corrupt politicians steal the money, and meds, stuff like this, for the money and meds, stuff like this should be reported so people will be aware, posting in social media, making it trending so it will be noticed. So now I have no objection, I have no disagreement with this as a comment, but what I'm really trying to get my head around is where people have come from, where they arrive in the Philippines from, well, I got a few places here. Look, Britain, US, Australia, they're usually my big three, because that's the experience that I have of people coming here. Australia, New Zealand. We've got a friend of ours is from New Zealand, two visitors from New Zealand. One is settling here and is in the process of doing that, Michael. And we've also got Kevin, who, Pakiko, he was the one that very generously, his company gave us a cement mixer, a huge gift, which is very much appreciated. Now, how can I deal with the idea that the Philippines is so incredibly corrupt? Now, I know that I usually come across as a defender of all things Filipino. It's not that I'm blind to everything that goes wrong, and I know that there's a ton of stuff that goes wrong. Okay, you're looking now at the face of a man whose wedding certificate, whose marriage certificate, I should say, had a spelling mistake on it, and then it cost Beth and I money and endless trips, it seems, to Cebu to get this correction made. And so hence my warning to anybody who gets a much needed important document done. Before you leave the desk of the person who is handing the document to you, you better have a look through it and check it, spell check it, make sure that everything is right. Otherwise you might find that you're from the UK, or you're from Oz or the US, and they've got you down as Filipino. If you're looking like me, you're not going to pull it off. So get it corrected at the desk. But all of that said, I'm well aware that things are not perfect. You can't live in the Philippines after having lived in a very regulated society like America or Australia or the UK, and not be aware that things are not perfect. Now, but let's look at corruption, because this is one of the things that is leveled at the Filipino people, as if the rest of the world is just governed by these almost angelic politicians. And I'm wondering where this planet is that this particular kind of alternate reality of UK, of the US, of even Australia. Australia I don't know very much about. I know that there are moments of absolute insanity when I was living in the UK, and I know that corruption is rampant in these other countries. It's rampant. It's not like you're coming here clad in shiny white sheets because you could have almost taken a right turn and gone straight to heaven. It's not that way at all. I can remember when there was there was a coal strike, and we were depending in the UK, and they were depending very much on coal for the power stations that they had back then. We're talking about 1900 and frozen to death, okay, considering my age. Well, one of the politicians went on television speaking awfully well. Of course he was awfully well. He was very, very well spoken and talking the Queen's English, as it used to be known then by the upper class. Okay? It's wonderful, isn't it? Yes, dear?
Nothing.
Did you call me?
No.
All right, it was just something that she said. Anyway, there he was talking about how we can all do our bit to save on the use of power, so that our power stations, such as they are on this restricted schedules, are able to function without being overloaded. Overloaded, old chap. And so he made one suggestion: why don't you bathe together? Why don't you brush your teeth in the dark? Believe me, I'm not making this stuff up. My name is not Monty Python. I'm not making it up. Why don't you brush your teeth, people? Why don't you brush your teeth in the dark? That will save something, won't it? And of course, you can bathe together. There's all kinds of stuff that one can do, can't one? Yes. Well, while all of this wisdom was pouring from this politician's mouth, somebody who was a journalist thought, I wonder what things look like around at his place. And so they followed him home. Well, when they got there, obviously the man is awfully rich and very well connected, and lives in rather a large and imposing home, doesn't he? And in order to show off this wonderful residence bordering on mansion size, every single light in the house was on, plus the arc lights that the better connected, who flood their homes so that they are absolute pictures of magnificence, was on and blazing. Now, maybe there was in the centre of this home a bathroom with the light turned off, and this man cleaning his teeth, brushing his teeth in the dark. I'm sure he was speaking absolutely the truth. So, are we going to really seriously talk about anybody that's come from America or Britain, or I don't know what the hell, Germany, Australia, any of these places where there is such a thing as a politician who speaks the truth? Boy, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? I have a feeling that in this place there are several other politicians. I think that probably Liberace is the president, for all I know. Michael Jackson might be there. He might be in charge of the economy. Some other wonderful characters, because it must be heaven. They must be in heaven. It can't be reality, can it? Isn't the signature tune going to be do 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 do? I think so, because it can't be the same planet that the rest of us are living on. So when you put down the Philippines for being corrupt, oh boy, you better put it in line. It's in line, and I doubt very much that it's ahead of America. America invented, well, maybe they were second to the Brits, I'm not quite sure. I just don't know any, with my very limited, I'm swatting mosquitoes here, with my very limited and awfully naive approach to politics. I'm sure that I'm missing all of the essential factors out. But I do know that I am frequently lied to by governments anywhere that I go. Look at what's happening in India. From what I see in India, you have elected officials who have been accused and have weighty evidence against them for raping people, for raping women, and they can't seem to get them judged. Over here in the Philippines, there was a few years ago, quite a few years ago I think, they're still trying to bring it to trial, that under some authority or other, some government or another, they herded together a load of journalists, and they killed them and buried them in a mass grave. And there are all kinds of things. If you look at the way that the Brits went into New Zealand, went into Australia, and what they did to children who were of mixed race, what they did there, how they decided that they would just condition the brown skin out of them. You take the children from their parents and you put them into a jolly good school, and you forbid them to use their own language and their own names, and sooner or later they'll be white as you and me. Didn't that happen under various peoples in America when we were busy robbing the owners of America of their rights and getting to sell portions of land, vast tracts of land for a few beads, and the American Indians, as they became known, didn't know that actually they were selling things, because ownership was just not something that they ever thought of. Do you know that when I speak to Beth about ownership of the land here, Nanai has about I think it's about 9 or 10 hectares of land which is in the family, right? And all of that land is owned by the family. So when I mentioned this to Beth, she said, well, yes, but there's that particular tract of land over there that the people that have now ploughed that land just ploughed into it, and it became theirs because they went and changed the documentation at the land registry office. I said, why didn't you do something about it? You own that land. She said, well, do we own any of this land? Do we own it? We're just taking care of it. Or is it taking care of us? So ideas on even things like ownership are just different wherever you go. The Aborigines never thought, in Australia, they never thought that they owned the land. They respected the land. The land owned them. And even now, the best story that I ever heard for the Aussies, told to me by an Aussie, and he was talking about how they've been trying to get the Aboriginals to integrate into the society for their own good, you know. And this particular official that was given the job of going around and speaking to the Aboriginals had approached this particular man who was sitting in a rocking chair on his porch in a very, very simple house. Very simple house, a little bit like the Philippine nipa huts. And he was in there on his rocking chair. And the government man approached and said, we're offering to retrain you. Right, so the Aboriginal is very patient. He says, and what would that be? Well, we could train you at anything that you want, an electrician or a plumber, something that you could really earn money at. Really. I'm not very good at Aboriginal accents, okay? So, we'll just take the Manchester accent as being the one of the Aboriginal. And the Aboriginal says, and what does that mean, sir? And the government official says, well, don't you understand that in retraining you would be able to integrate into the society? You would be able to use your training, your new skills, to earn a living.
What would I, what kind of a living would I earn?
Well, if you were a plumber, you would be able to go out, even as a self-employed plumber, and you would be able to work on the houses of people and earn money.
What would I do with that money?
Well, you would be able to save, you would pay into the system, or the social security system.
Why would I do that?
Well, because if you do that, when it comes time to retire, what does that mean? Well, when we all retire at 65, we can then look forward to being able to do whatever we want.
And,
like, what would it mean to me, do you think? Well, if you had saved and contributed to the government social security system, you would be able to sit here on your porch in your rocking chair and watch the world go by.
Yeah, you're gonna do that.
The man, the Aboriginal man, said, "That's what I have."
that's what I already have.
That's what I already have, and we need to eat now.
You nearly ruined my punchline then, you know that, don't you?
Sorry. Sorry.
Sometimes life is very, very difficult with this woman. Now what?
Come on, let's eat now.
Okay. Well,
This is a foreigner living out in the Philippines.
At the Philippines?
Please like, comment, and
what you talking about in the Philippines?
A foreigner in the Philippines. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Again, it's up to you.
she's been listening to my Manchester accent, hasn't she? Will you get out of there?
Come on, hon.
Thanks for looking in. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. My little vent on corruption.
Corruption?
Is it in the Philippines or is it the world
Yes,
over?
corruption is all over the world, darling. It's not just in one country, it's over the world.
Get out of here. Bye for now. Don't forget to comment, like, comment and subscribe.